there is a huge need. I think media has to pick up on that and encourage people to give money to those charities that help people in abusive relationships or being trafficked.
Social media is not going away. It's a strong, powerful tool for good, but it is the number one way now that primary school children, young teenagers, are being recognized by traffickers. They're being groomed and they're being brought into this criminal activity. We've created a vacancy that we need to be constantly validated and appreciated and told that we're loved by others, and not others that we're surrounded by that we know, but by the faceless millions of people on our social media.
Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 257. My name is Andrew.
And this is Michelle. And holy crap, it's December in 2020, the year that feels like, I mean, I think I've said this before, but I feel like there's a meme out there that is just so accurate. And it's like, I saw it, I think in July, and it was like, I know it's July, but my mind is still in March. And I feel like every month I just update that. Like, yeah, I know it's December, but my mind is still back in March.
Yeah. I mean, this has been one for the history books. And everyone, let's get rid of 2020 because we've had a lot of good podcasts come out in 2020. So hopefully that's
true.
The one shining star.
Oh yeah. Hopefully we've entertained everyone in 2020.
Yeah.
And if this is your first episode because this is a kind of non-dental interview, I would say, like it affects the masses. So if you are not a dental person, welcome to a dental podcast hosted by two hygienists. And I'm really excited because one of my friends, I was like, I can't wait for this to come out. Because my friends know we have this podcast, but like they don't give a crap. Like
I know.
Like, you start talking about dental stuff and our brains turn off. And I was like, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is going to be a good one. Like I think that everyone needs to hear. So I always get excited when because I think this whole month actually is going to be episodes that everybody could listen to.
And honestly, I do like those episodes a lot more. I know, yes, we are a dental podcast, blah, 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 but there's that human connection portion to who we are, what we do, what we believe in, what we stand for, that comes out very clearly in these episodes. And that's what makes me the most happy. So I feel like we're giving back to the world through these amazing two individuals in this particular episode who are giving back even more. So yeah, makes me happy.
Yeah. And we should probably just go ahead and introduce it since this did run long.
It is a long one.
Which is a big shock since you were actually on this one with me and you allowed me to go longer than normal.
Yeah, well, it was good.
It was a good one. So we have returning to the podcast. Oh, please say Sakher's full name.
Sakher Alqahtani.
Thank you. And Amber Riley. I'll take the easy one. Sakher, it's not you, it's me. I promise.
It is very much. She's not trying to break up with you. That is totally her thing. She's the worst.
The worst. So we're bringing them back on. We've had Sakher on. We've had them both on. This is their
multiple
third time?
times.
Well, Amber's been on multiple times, but this is their third time on talking about this kind of topic, which is human and sex trafficking. And I think people might struggle with why do dental hygienists need to know this? And I think they do a really good job of explaining that. And I think if you go back to the other episodes that Amber and Sakher have done, then that will really lay some groundwork and you'll understand why we were just kind of doing an update to like what this even looks like in 2020 now that, because for me, traditionally, I would have assumed that because nobody could travel, that sex trafficking had gone down. And
I would assume the same thing.
Incorrect. So
yeah, spoilers. It didn't.
Spoiler alert.
Information about that for you guys.
Yeah. So enjoy this episode with Amber and Sakher.
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's time for the interview.
Oh, but I had something else to say.
We need to let the experts talk now.
Fine. Okay, listeners, we have a super important episode that we are bringing to you. This is kind of a repeat or a return topic, I should say. It's super important. And two of the best people I know to speak on it are also returning guests, Amber and Sakher. Did I say that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Because I like to butcher a name any way I can, even if it's super easy. So welcome back to the podcast to you both.
Thank you. It's always wonderful to be back.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
I'm Amber Riley. I'm in San Diego, California. I'm a registered dental hygienist. I've been in practice for I'm going on 23 years now. And I finished my undergraduate at Wright State University. I did my master's degree at Boston University. And I've been involved, along with clinical practice, I began to involve myself in forensic dentistry now almost 20 years ago. And it was through the certain parameters of forensic dentistry that I met Sakher back in 2013. We were at an international conference and we had a mutual colleague that introduced us and we became very, very good friends. Since then, I have progressed through the promotion of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, and I'm a fellow of the American Academy. And I'm a fellow also of the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners, and I'm a forensic consultant to the San Diego County Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. So that, I think, it's all of those tie-ins that bring me into topics like trafficking, because I'm exposed a little bit more to the very end, worst outcome of what happens to victims of trafficking. But I'm also tied into a lot of realms of investigation and law enforcement that has not a lot to do with me being a clinical hygienist, but it has a lot to do with me being a healthcare provider. And it has a lot to do with me being in interaction with my patients and the public stratifications. Even though I teach forensic programs, the majority of my classes that I teach are more clinically based, but my participation in forensics has been the most rewarding adjunct to my career as a clinical hygienist. There's no money in it, and it's not regular work, but it has given me networks and friendships from all over the world, and that has enriched me as a professional. I feel like it's made me a better clinician. And so I love to talk about these topics that are as heavy as they are, because it's not me so much as a hygienist, but me as an educator, that I have a platform, I have a voice, I have experience and exposure to some of these things. And if people are interested and they want to listen, then, perhaps I can help get that message out. And so it's less common to have a dental hygienist with those particular type of credentials in the Academy of Forensic Science and the, associated with coroners and medical examiners and all that. But it's who I am, and it's somehow working out. But that's how I met Sakher, yeah.
Which is amazing, and who you introduced us. And you both have great episodes and have been on the episodes together years ago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a Chicago midwinter meeting, probably 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
And Sakher.
Been a long time.
It's still on good.
Okay, I'm Sakher Alqahtani from Saudi Arabia. I'm an associate professor, pediatric dentist. I'm the head of the forensic odontology unit in Saudi Arabia, a member of the medical health, also an honorary professor in the University of Queensland in Australia. I'll keep it brief. That's me.
Sakher. Well, tell them a little bit about your atlas, Sakher. I think you should promote that, because that was I believe that was the culmination of your PhD. Is that correct?
Yeah. I developed a new method for age estimation using teeth, the development of teeth. And it's been translated into 22 languages. And it's available online. It's called the London Atlas of Tooth Development and Eruption. And actually, thank you, Amber, for reminding me, because the age estimation, especially is crucial for people who are trafficked, because sometimes, depending on the law, the age of criminal responsibility needs to be assessed because under a certain age, you cannot be prosecuted, for instance. And sometimes between different ages, being a minor, like between 12 and 15, 15 to 18, being a minor has a different outcome on the type of persecution or the sentence. In many cases, these human trafficked people, even it's different from state to state in the United States, these ages and the age of consent. And many times, these trafficked people lack their papers if they were moved from their home or if they were kidnapped. So they don't have an identification paper saying they are, or, a birth certificate. So this needs to be assessed, the age, and My Atlas helps in that process to give the accurate age for an individual in the absence of documents. So thank you, Amber, to raise the issue of the age with the human trafficking, and I think it's important.
But the last time we spoke with you, Sakher, was in Australia.
Yeah, I returned back to Saudi Arabia, whereas my wife and daughter are still in Australia. And so now we're both, I haven't seen them for a year now. And I have no idea when we're going to meet again, because our borders are closed in Saudi Arabia because of COVID, and their borders are closed. They have the summer vacation over Christmas, and she wanted to come to Saudi Arabia for a month, but they told her that if she moves out from Australia, she can't go back in, because only people who can enter Australia are citizens or first degree relatives, but students are not allowed to go in. So I can't go, but I don't have a vacation or a holiday. So it's a horrible situation.
Man.
That is so tough.
But thank God for technology. Thank God for technology and FaceTime and these, ways of communication. Otherwise, it could have been worse.
Wow. Well, we'll be thinking of you and your family over the holidays, because that is very tough. And there are so many people that have been separated from their families for many reasons. And that's kind of a topic that we're going to be talking about. And, I was very curious, and I think Andrew and I spoke about this. I was like, I wonder what human trafficking looks like in the age of COVID. And if there had been any...
Oh, yeah.
I hate to say like creative ways
the data is appalling.
I don't know if creative is the way I want to put it.
No, your instinct is correct. The data is appalling. Even just like what I pulled from my state of California, just the last 90 days, but the last 180 days, we have a human trafficking task force here in San Diego, and they're extremely publicly oriented. They've been very, very generous with information and data and stuff for me with my legitimate requests as what's going on. And it's been like Black Friday for traffickers and for at-risk persons, because the media that is used is now attached to us 24/7. The safety of even being in a classroom isn't there now. Your classroom is at home and it's online, and you have 24/7 need to be accessing your online learning. But along with that comes the media platforms that are being used to identify, groom, and abuse. That's as blunt as I can put it. How to identify a potential victim, how to groom that victim, and then how to get them, move them into and I'm speaking more of sex work, but it is, this year has opened the floodgates. It's extraordinarily concerning, the increased number of cases and reports that my task force is receiving from parents, from teachers, from those that have been victimized.
And also this a situation that the world is in right now with the lockdown especially changed some cases from being just in a domestic abuse into a trafficked person within their home, because now they're not allowed to go out of their home. So they are sort of kidnapped within their homes from their abusive partner. So that situation changed the dynamic from being just an abusive relationship into being trafficked within your home and being raped repeatedly by your partner and then beaten up. And, so it really changed the way that human trafficking is, because usually when we think of human trafficking, we think of people taking from their homes and putting in somewhere and being taken advantage of. either sexually or labor or whatever. But now with the situation, a partner within their own home can be classified as human traffickers and the trafficked, and also the domestic servants or help, the live-in help. Now they're also subjected to that situation, being human trafficked, because they cannot leave the house. They're being threatened all the time, beaten, or raped. So it changed a lot of situations for many, many people around the world, especially those under total lockdown during the months. And now Europe, so many countries have returned back to the total lockdown as well. And there was a panorama documentary made by the BBC in the UK regarding this specific situation, the women who were subjected to this and they wanted to escape and they couldn't escape, and interviews with the women who could escape. So I think it is a hugely important topic now, hot topic, especially with the era of the pandemic, the global pandemic.
Yeah, it's so many unforeseen consequences of being in a lockdown. The domestic abuse, where the child had at least respite when they could go to school. That was their time away from the person abusing them. And now they're not allowed to go to school. You know, being able to go to work was at least time away from the person that abuses you. And now you're working from home or you're out of work. And the pressures of being underemployed or unemployed, still have access to abusable substances that make us less personable, more drinking. There's been a massive uptick in opioid overdoses. And again, I can speak for my county, where we're not, especially in America, we clearly have not been well prepared or well designed to handle this kind of thing. So you have an increase of abuse because you can't even get a school day away from your abuser. You don't get a work day away from your abuser. You're locked in with them now 24/7. And we're still going on with this, which is astonishing. But yeah, Sakher brings a very good point as well to that. And that seems to be global. Interpol's reporting on that kind of data from all of the Interpol member countries. And they're reporting this consistent data per capita.
Can I ask about that data? Because it seems to me that there would be a less opportunity to be able to report if you're not going to work as much, not going to school as much. So how do they collect that data? How do they find all this out?
Oh, so like, how are they finding the time to get away from the person that's in their face that's abusing them?
But yeah, like who's reporting? Because I would think that reporting would actually go down if you're not in these public spaces that you used to be.
No, I'm seeing it go up. So they're still sending an email, making a phone call, neighbors, a text message.
Nosy neighbors are okay these days.
Yeah, sometimes they are. Or, even that little bit of time that there was a case in, I think it was Los Angeles. I have to look it back up. But so they had grocery delivery and she passed a note to the guy that was delivering her groceries. I said, call the police.
Yeah, that's smart.
I mean, desperate times, desperate measures. Oh, it just got chill bumps thinking I remember that story just a second ago. And the same methods, phone calls, text messages, emails, neighbors reporting, overhearing the violence. That's an interesting thought that you would think, Andrew, but no, the reports are going up.
I would say the reports on domestic abuse are going up for sure on a global level everywhere. And this is something that is really alarming. But the reports on the people being human trafficked, that is a little bit hazy because we cannot grasp the full situation of how many people are human trafficked. But for abuse, definitely is going up. And in the beginning of the lockdown, when it was 24/7 and you cannot leave your home at all. And then after, I think, 2 months or something, they allowed 1 hour of exercise. You go out for 1 hour to walk or to run, whatever, or walk the dog. And during that period, when they allowed 1 hour, a lot of people had the opportunity to escape because their abuser went out for a walk or for a run during that time. So that was a crucial break because the number of deaths from abuse also increased on a global level for children and for women and even for men. And so When people think of legislations or the way to combat this pandemic and putting these public health measures, I don't think they grasp the idea of the effect of that on people in these situations. They get overlooked, and a lot of resources go down actually for the charities or the community workers that can help with these situations. First of all, they cannot go. They're not considered as essential workers. This is number one. And number two is that the funding gets taken away from these avenues and given to health aspects, which is important, of course, but there is a huge need. I think media has to pick up on that and encourage people to give money to those charities that help people in abusive relationships or being trafficked.
I think that's a great point, like as a call to action, maybe. So for instance, in Charleston, we have a local shelter like called Doors to Freedom that is taking in anyone that has been in a situation of human trafficking, has nowhere to go, nothing to do. And now they're raising money for that second level of like, so now this was like a safe house for a while. Now, like what happens first fit like phase two, because obviously they're not going to be there forever, but they're not ready to be out fully in the world, like buying their own house or renting a house or staying with people. Like, so it's kind of like a little place, an interim place to go, I guess. So I would say definitely look for local places to see if you can donate their time and money and resources. And they are asking for a lot of things.
And also regarding these safe houses, there's another problem related to the pandemic, which is the number of people allowed to be within one vicinity at the same time during a pandemic. So with the numbers being as low as 10 people, more than 10 people, you cannot have more than 10 people who were not in a bubble staying together at the same time. So lots of safe houses couldn't even accept people to come in because of the laws. I'm not sure, I don't know how is the law in the US or was during the spike of the pandemic, but here in Saudi Arabia or in Europe, the amount of people that were allowed to stay together, they're not within a bubble, was in the beginning 5 people, and then increased to 10 people. And then now in Saudi Arabia, it's 50 people. But in Europe, it went from 50 people back down to 5 people. So lots of safe houses are not operable.
Mm-hmm. It's always such a heavy topic, but gosh, we need to hear this because I think, we've been kind of, woe is me and the pandemic, it's so bad for us. Like,
yes, it is very sobering.
Mm-hmm.
It is very sobering.
Yeah. That this is
puts things in perspective.
I don't know if this is something that you guys are looking into, but my mind goes to the capabilities or the abilities of law enforcement to actually act on some of the tips and the reportings that they get, if that has changed since the pandemic hit. For instance, we know that like in San Francisco, right away, some of our dental friends, they would have their offices looted and things like that. And the police would come, they would say, look, I mean, we can't really do this because we don't have the resources to go after certain people at this time. Do you feel like that is playing a part at all in the legal department or the bringing people to justice?
The law enforcement being overwhelmed is ubiquitous in the United States, and there is a hierarchy or priority of crimes. Property crime is going to come far under the priority of harm against a child or harm against another human, whether it's as even though some of these cases are pled down to third-degree battery or even disturbing the peace, but they'll take a higher priority than a property crime, unfortunately. But we don't have really any more police officers or any more social workers or any more trauma specialists this year than we had a year before we all went into this. But we have an enormous amount more crime and varied crime. But the uptick is when COVID is gone, the aftermath, when the dust settles, is going to be jaw-dropping with the number of additional victims above our rolling average of annual victims, which I can give you a bunch of statistics, but statistics are hard to listen to on a podcast. When this is all done, then we see this python the pig and the python of data during probably 18 months total that we're going to be pulling statistics, crime statistics from the beginning of March 2020 to whenever we're completely out of this. The uptick in the number of primary age students and teenagers that were victimized or groomed or even approached. If that kind of, I'm not sure how well granular the data is. I can talk to you a little bit about it, some stuff that's going on in San Diego, programs that are out there that are kind of crawling social media sites like Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat to try to identify profiles of people that are at risk before they become a victim, to try to educate parents and try to get a media campaign out there that says you need, recognize these signs. So artificial intelligence, it has a purpose for good as well. We hear all the scary stuff, but there's people out there developing AI for the good of the common man as well. As we see quarterly, the reports of new cases filed, our courts were closed for 2, 3, 4 months as well. There were arrests and holding, but the arraignments weren't going on. Charges weren't being filed, but arraignments weren't being held. Court dates weren't being set. And now, so we have a backlog of just our everyday crime, let alone the uptick in this kind of stuff. But we're catching up, and there's cases that are court cases that are being held from a distance as well, where the judge is in their chambers and the district attorney and the defense attorney are in their maybe in the courtroom, but far enough away. So it's been a wild accommodation. But yeah, I would say stay tuned. The number of cases probably that are going to be prosecuted in the next 12 to 18 months stemming from this period of shutdown will be higher.
Also, there's another problem regarding the pandemic and the law enforcement, because a lot of personnel from the law enforcement are being used to help with the health system, with distribution of things, with organizing things. So regarding the testing, regarding patients, regarding whatever is linked to the virus itself. And these are resources that are taken away from the law enforcement to help in the organization or whatever it is they're doing. So they are already overstretched. And now you're even taking a lot of that resource from people who need it because of a public health issue. And that has an enormous effect on the situation, I would say, on a global level.
So I'm curious, how do we get ahead of this? Because, we've learned quite a lot in 2020 as far as, if you watched anything like The Social Dilemma, and we think that we're super informed. We go on Facebook, we go on TikTok, we do all these things, and you think that you're getting the right information. You think you're getting ahead of it. You think you hear the right stories, but we've all been shown that we see what people want us to see. How does one get ahead of this? And because granted, if you're going to do something nefarious, you're going to find a way that people hadn't even thought of in this world. And I guess my mind just is how do we look at a prevention side of this?
Prevention, in my opinion, from the way I've looked at this, it comes from identifying the victim before the offender does. Finding the 12-year-old that in her mind, she is already become so normalized to overt sexual behavior, sexualized music, overtly sexualized language, hanging out with individuals that are significantly older than her. And then the underlying factor, commonly with victims, female victims especially, is that they are staggeringly seeking a sense of constant validation. They're on social media, posting their pictures, their selfies, 50 selfies a day, seeking validation. And they'll take that validation from a stranger. They'll take that validation from anyone. Like my picture, compliment my picture, tell me I'm pretty, tell me I'm sexy. send me private messages. It's all underlying a severe lack of confidence, a severe lack of validation, and that confidence, that validation that should be coming from a family unit, from a household, from a parent, isn't there. And that the social dilemma, I did see that movie, and it is very provocative because it forces you to realize that we have all adapted our self-perception based on the comments of strangers, based on the validation of strangers. No longer is it important to me that my family and my parents are proud of me, or my church, or my classroom. Now I have an absolutely limitless audience of blank faces, and I need every single one of them to like what I'm saying, to laugh at what I'm saying, to tell me I'm pretty. That is a victim. That is a victim waiting to be found by an offender. And these offenders, usually men, but not always, they'll come in and they'll send messages and they'll like, and they'll, Instagram is particularly nefarious for grooming and trafficking. It's very easy. Social media is not going away. It's a strong, powerful tool for good, but it is the number one way now that primary school children, young teenagers, are being recognized by traffickers. They're being groomed and they're being brought into this criminal activity. It's as straight as I can put it.
I think, Michelle, you hit the nail on the head when you said that how can we access information about these things? Because now all social media target you with specific things that they want you to see based on your interest, based on you. They know what exactly you want to look at. Because if an app is free, you are the product, basically. So this is the problem, because if it isn't within your circle, you will never hear these problems or the statistics on human trafficking or the dangers or the prevention. I think one of the key elements in prevention is identifying the marginal communities in our countries, because those are disproportionately more prone to being human trafficked. The minorities, the women, the children are, especially the minorities in any country. These are the weaker links in human trafficking, and the predators prey on those, whether it was sexual, where it was forced labor, or if it was forced marriage, or organ dealing or organ trade.
Oh, that is a whole nother one.
Yeah, this is an amazing topic. And it's getting worse, the organ trade, because some people want to escape their country for whatever reason, and then they contact a human smuggler or an immigrant smuggler, which is different from human trafficking, because the difference between the two is the consent. So with this human smuggler, there's a consent, and then they go and then they pay the fee, and then they're free when they reach whatever they reached. Whereas in human trafficking, you cannot escape, and there is no consent. And if there was an initial consent in the beginning, and then things changed, then that consent isn't being redundant. Anyway, so with the human smugglers, sometimes they ask for a high fee. So people sell their kidneys or sell their organs to give it to the human smugglers. And now with the situation there, and this is a crime, of course, and it's a form of human trafficking. But now people are doing this, selling their kidneys, doing contracts with the smugglers or whatever, and then they're not getting paid. And then the middleman or the recruiter of the organ, whatever, they disappear. And then this person who was in a very bad situation before, now is in a worse situation because they've lost a kidney. They couldn't go wherever they wanted to go. They're still in that bad situation, and they can't do anything about it. And this is a huge, huge problem, especially in North Africa now at the moment, with this type of issue where they're not getting paid, or they're getting paid less than the agreement. So it's a huge problem. And I think targeting those minorities, educating them from the beginning on the consequences, because as Amber said, the grooming thing with the sexual human trafficking, especially for children, they don't know the danger. I mean, when someone approaches them and starts to groom them, they don't understand the danger. It hasn't been across in their lives and their school system and with their parents, because something new, especially with the social media. And Amber, you said Instagram. I would argue that TikTok now is worse than Instagram, because TikTok has the best AI technology ever, and it targets you from the second number one on what you like. And then it feeds a lot of things your way. And with that, a lot of adult men grooming young girls and young boys through TikTok. So TikTok now is emerging as one of the worst social things.
There's a market for it. There's a market for sex with a child. And there are people that are more than willing to feed that market, to find those buyers and give them what they want. So the education is to a parent that can't believe that their child would be targeted. This data of what I'm seeing in the United States, it is across every race, it's both genders, it's every socioeconomic status. Any child can be targeted, caught up, and abused. I don't care if they're living in the richest zip code in California or the poorest one. If they have a lack of self-confidence, they have a lack of validation, they're a sign that says I'm open for business, and they don't know it. So education to the potential victim, education to a parent to, yes, believe their child absolutely can be a victim, and that child can be a victim sitting in their living room on their phone. It's that nefarious. It's that easy. The scales have just got to come off of our eyes. The organ trafficking that Sakher and I have talked about, this particular method of trafficking at length before. But that's a conversation for a whole nother podcast. But there's a lot of scary things going on out there. But ultimately, if there's a market, and what's the motive? So a child's motive is never to be abused and trafficked and sold for sex. But with an individual that's willing to sell off an organ in order to have enough money to move out of a situation of civil war or civil unrest, how far removed is that from us being willing to sell our plasma for a little more money? It's still a body part. I'm still consenting. Women sell their ovum. Men sell their sperm. We do it for money, do it maybe for biological research, but there's a lot of things that we really don't want to think that there's a market for. And there are. It's very sobering. We traffic infants. You have surrogates, women that will sell 9 months of their life to be a surrogate for another family. Some do it out of a love and a philanthropic effort, a sister carrying a child for her brother or something like that. But, well, that'd probably be a little too close. I don't think a sister should carry for the brother. Maybe a sister-in-law. But you get what I'm saying. So ultimately, there's an extension or an extraction of what we become used to doing, what becomes normalized. A 12-year-old girl that is being propped up multiple times a day by several adult men telling her how beautiful she is and how sexy she is, that it's normalizing that to a 12-year-old brain for which it shouldn't be normal. And those are the girls that are getting victimized. And boys. This is not a female-only issue. Boys are trafficked and abused and raped, not as frequently according to the data, but they're just as vulnerable. They have the same lack of confidence. They have the same need for validation. And so what's missing in the
statistics
home?
Say that for children, sorry, Amber.
No, it's okay.
Just to complete your idea regarding the boys and girls. The statistics say that for sexual human trafficking, 49% are women and 33% are children. From those 33% children, it's 2 girls for a boy. So there is a disproportionate statistics or skew towards the females.
Is it sex or labor?
This is sex.
For the kids.
And going back to the education, regarding the education, when a charity or a government wants to put on some measures for education or to target communities for prevention. I think also understanding the data regarding what type of human trafficking happens in that area, because it differs around the world. In North America, for instance, 60% is sexual human trafficking, whereas in Southeast Asia and Middle Asia, it's human labor. It's 65% of human trafficking is for labor and child labor as well. So it's different aspects of human trafficking based on where you are. If you're in subcontinent of India, maybe one of the most ways of human trafficking is forced marriage. So it depends on where you are or what community, because you can be in a community in North America that comes from somewhere else that is subjected to that form of human trafficking. So I think understanding the data on a global level and on a local level is crucial for designing prevention or education programs regarding human trafficking.
I'll email you, Michelle, some websites we have some that's kind of local to me that I'm more familiar with the organization, but some of the national ones too that you can just put in the show notes for individuals that want to, see a little bit more the reality of what's going on for trafficking of all kinds, all ages, all motive.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see that. And, what's in the back of my head, and, this is a podcast for thousands, so I'll walk the line here. But I feel like, this year as a female, I have really enjoyed seeing a little bit of the purity culture die, a little bit of the slut shaming, a little bit more like women empowerment, embrace your sexuality, embrace that. Well, I'll just call it the purity culture. Like, you don't feel the shame of being a sexual being, right? However, on the flip side of that, you have, and I do love it. Like, that is what I think is so great about some of the female movement. But again, I keep in the back of my head, like, how can I embrace this real excitement that I feel that women can be sexual beings without being shamed? But also, how do you do this where it isn't embracing or creating a culture with these young women that then results in sexual trafficking or sexual abuse? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I guess that's like where
I believe I understand where you're coming from. The ultimate difference there would be emotional and biological maturity. There's not a ubiquitous norm of what an age of consent is around the world. We're within nation to nation, we have an age of consent, 16, definitely 18, and that includes sexual consent as well. But there is such a massive emotional, it's just a chasm between a 12-year-old girl's mind and even an 18-year-old girl's mind. Just because a 12-year-old is physiologically mature, they've been through puberty, something like that, in the mind, to normalize sexual prowess at 13 is problematic.
Right.
Versus 30, versus 25. Law is part of it because you have, you do want to take in the age of consent, but just the earlier and earlier and earlier sexualization of our population, whether they're having early sexual experiences with someone in their own age group, or more likely they're being exposed to sexualization, to pornography, to television movies, something like that's kind of seeding their exposure a little bit earlier and earlier. No, I think there's absolutely a balance that can and will be should be achieved between the canceling of the purity culture. When I think it was 2017 when the Weinstein scandal began to be exposed, that had been going on for 20 years in his career prior to Hollywood, and no one would talk about it. It shows you power, the kind of power that he had in the industry, the power they had over the women. And it took the women getting together to finally break their silence, whatever cost it was. So that the issue is that validation is that a woman's sexuality is her power, but a woman's power is It's in her confidence, and it's in her self-validation, not the need of validation by someone else. I don't need someone else to tell me I'm beautiful, I'm smart, and I'm sexy. They have to believe it themselves.
And regarding the empowerment of women or the feminism movement, yes, it is great that there is no slut shaming. I won't say there is no slut shaming, but it is
Right.
much less than it used to be. But the problem is with that is that being a confident or expressing yourself sexually with confidence as a woman can send the wrong message to young children, to young girls, because they see themselves being empowered through that medium, being sexually, flaunting their sexuality, and they see it as part of the being empowerment. Some of it, yes, because there's no shame in their bodies and they have to be proud of it. I understand that. But at the same time, empowering women should be wholesome through being clever at school, being active in sports, being
You're responsible feminist.
Right. So taking an apple to an apple, so I have my niece just had a daughter. And so do I want my great niece growing up modeling herself, if you want to just take an apple to an apple, over Kamala Harris or Nicki Minaj? These are both beautiful, strong women of color. One is projecting an entirely different image to young people than the other. Both are confident, validated, sexually powerful women. The message is different. One of them got their power from education, from hard work, and one of them got their power based on her looks. They're both talented. They both have a network of individuals around them helping them do what they do every day. But at the end of the day,
the pendulum swing, right? Like we go from that, the shaming purity culture, and then it's swung
to where everything is completely fine. Yeah. And if you aren't 100% completely confident in your sexuality, then
DNA for days. Exactly. So we just got to let it fall in the middle.
Yeah.
To be a responsible feminist.
And it's always consistently revolves around women and not men. Where's this slut shaming for men? They're pimps. A pimp is great. A pimp is strong. A pimp is wealthy and powerful, and has a cash flow coming in. We've normalized the word pimp into our vernacular. Pimp my ride, pimp my house. That's normalizing very bad behavior.
That's patriarchy.
It's patriarchy, yes.
And the whole point of human trafficking and all of its aspects is patriarchy, is control over the weaker, whether it was women or children or whatever. Yeah, not necessarily, of course, but it is a patriarchal structure that is the problem.
And I do not have the solution to down with the patriarchy. I don't have that solution.
I wish we had the solution. I remember one of the things you said when we were in Australia was a lot of the trafficking rings are run by women.
Yes.
And so traditionally, or I guess historically, I should say, I had always thought it was a very patriarchal from the sense of male, it was the male dominating over the weak, over the women. But I thought that was that's something that has stuck with me since our conversation.
Especially sexual human trafficking, because they were once part of that structure. They were themselves being human trafficked and coerced or forced to work in that environment. And then when they broke free for whatever reason, or they got old and they're not profitable anymore, so they turn back and do the same thing to other women, because this is the profession they understand. And they know that there's money out of it. They can recruit more easily. And even if they don't run the scene, they are definitely a crucial part in the system, because they recruit. They don't have to control, but they are a major source of recruitment. No one can recruit women. I mean, they can, but it's much less for a man to recruit a woman to be in the sex trade, whereas a woman can easily portray, safety or being someone that you can confide in or a safe place to be. And then you get trapped. So women, especially in sex trafficking, yes, play a huge role, whether it is being the recruiter or being the controller of the ring. And this is what we see if you do a small search on Google, saying a human traffic ring busted or whatever, you see the amount of the leaders of that ring, they most definitely have a woman with them. And in contrast to other types of violence where men are dominant in that, this profession has women.
So you guys said earlier, you used the term grooming. And I'm curious, what does that actually mean? Because I mean, in my head, I picture like brushing their hair and like making sure they're bathed, but that is obviously not all of it.
In the way that I was using it, grooming is a generalized term, though, for preparation. Grooming is preparation. If you want, I'm thinking of it, it's a psychological preparation. It's the breaking down of hesitation and barriers. It's a malevolent type of foreplay for an adult to target and begin to manipulate the psyche of their intended victim. They are grooming them to accept gentle advances that become more and more explicit. This is all done contact-free in so many cases, especially, again, with social media, with text messages, inside of apps, social apps. It can take months, years. It can take, some reports say even just a couple of days, depending on the vulnerability of the victim. That victim's need for validation, maybe the victim's need for money. So like in San Diego, for instance, we have very, very good laws, strong laws for our traffickers. When a trafficker is caught, arrested, and brought to justice, we have very severe penalties. But the buyers are often, they're not as severely punished or even charged at all. Or they have, with intent and knowledge, bought the right to rape a child. They can plea it down to a misdemeanor if they will be a witness against the trafficker. I mean, there was a really high-end case in San Diego last year. I think it finished out last year, where the individual was a wealthy businessman, and he knowingly purchased a couple of underage girls for sex. And even though he found out later that they were under the age of 18, so therefore, if you're under the age of 18, you cannot consent to sex, even if you're being paid for it legally. There is no consent. So, he said, I'm giving them what they want, which is money. I'm getting what I want, which is sex. And it's victimless. It's not victimless. These girls were both believing that their pimp was their boyfriend, and their pimp was the one telling them how to create a back page, and even had this guy marked on Facebook to where he gave them their name, his name, the mark's name, and send him a message, tell him this, tell him that, and he'll be good for the money. So it was very organized. But the victim here is that these young, impressionable girls that just want to be loved, and they want to be validated, and they want to be appreciated by someone whom they deem as important and powerful and loves them. And so it circles back to law enforcement is definitely a part of it. But I think I feel like the bigger picture is that there's something very, very broken in our youngest people, is that we've created a vacancy that we need to be constantly validated and appreciated and told that we're loved by others, and not others that we're surrounded by that we know, but by the faceless millions of people on our social media. That is where the vulnerability is. That's the easiest place for someone to be identified, groomed, and manipulated into this kind of abuse. I'll send you an app, Michelle, for the show notes as well. It was developed by a retired Qualcomm executive and a couple of his colleagues who had a daughter that was caught up in trafficking. And what he had learned was that in her case and in the case of so many others, that their offender found them as a stranger online. And he's developed an app that parents can download onto their kids' phones and iPads and laptops and things like that. That is an artificial intelligence that is searching chat histories and searching social media sites for flags, for suggestive words, certain terminologies, maybe flagged accounts that are known to be of other registered offenders. And it's a pretty powerful tool. And I'm just learning a little bit more about it as well. Again, it's just another way for a parent to put a safeguard around their kids without taking away something that we've all become so completely enmeshed in and dependent on, being online and being on Facebook and things like that. So that's a preventive measure, or at least an attempt at a prevention measure.
Can I open a new tab?
What?
Can I open a new tab?
Open a new tab?
Yeah, regarding the law. There is a big problem with the law in regard to people who've been human trafficked, because they can still be prosecuted if two women are being sex trafficked and one of them put makeup on the other woman. She can be charged as being the human trafficker. And a lot of people are afraid to go and report that they've been human trafficked because of this issue. If you drive someone, if you're both trafficked and you drive that other person somewhere, you can be seen by the law as being helping the trafficker. And this is a big problem worldwide, by the way. So I think taking or at least emphasizing this issue on to the public, that human trafficked people need to be decriminalized because they're forced. They're not doing it by choice. They are forced. They can be killed. They can be acid thrown in their face. They can have their arm chopped off. Whatever it is that the human trafficker needs to do to keep them on track. So the law doesn't see it that way. They see them as the same as the person who trafficked them. And this issue needs to be highlighted.
What's the reason for that?
I don't know, but it is a big issue for people not going forward and reporting the trafficker because they're afraid of this, because it exists and happens. And sometimes even the trafficker threatens them with that, saying that, well, they forced them to help someone, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, in the United States, I would say that it's the possession of, especially for the young victims, it's the possession of collateral on them. So if I'm having a one-on-one conversation with this guy that's been grooming me for 2 or 3 months and he's getting me to send him pictures, naked pictures, things like that, I'm giving that guy collateral over me now. And so that if I don't do what he ultimately asks me to do or tells me that I have to do, then he threatens my 14-year-old self with, I'm going to put these pictures all online and everyone's going to see these pictures you sent me. And that is mortifying, that I sent these just to you. These are my intimate pictures I sent to you. And so that it's collateral. It's a collateral that they will use over a girl or a boy that is then embarrassed of what they sent to the person that's wanting to abuse them. And so they comply with what that other person wants them to do, because now they're afraid all their naked pictures are going to go out on the internet. That's a really common tactic here. It's a really common tactic, and it works. It works.
It's a common tactic in life, right? Like just, everybody has something they'll hold over your head, and then the manipulation ruins trust. And then, it's just this whole trickle down effect, but it's in every like little sprinkled about life, work, professional, career, all of that. I just to like bring this into some dental hygiene stuff. And if we do have students that are listening, what I just keep hearing is like when you lack the hierarchy of needs, and if you're in hygiene school right now, you probably are learning like Maslow's hierarchy of need. Am I saying that correctly? I think I am. And, in the time when I was a student, I was learning that. I was like, can we get to the cleaning of the teeth? Like, when do we get to the plaque? All right, y'all. And this just goes to the foundation of like how you have to understand that you need so much. You need the security, you need food, because if you are lacking in any of those things, the ripple effect, it could be so great and so dangerous. And like, you really have to identify that in a lot of your patients as you're learning this and trying to connect with them. And
that's where that would be the tie-in. All medical professionals, but all of us here are in dentistry and dental hygiene. The recognition, like I said, every socioeconomic status, both genders, younger and younger and younger. These are individuals that are sitting in your hygiene chair. The FBI published statistics last year that said 1 out of 3 primary students in the United States are at risk, and 1 out of 9 students by the time they've reached high school has been trafficked. Has been. So don't think for a second they're not showing up in your chair as well. That you may not have, that you would have an individual that comes in for the regular hygiene appointment from their upper middle class white household family that isn't deeply damaged and traumatized already. And that it's in every community. And it could be, sex is prevalent, but there are, like Sakher is talking about, there's many other types of trafficking and legal definitions of trafficking. Consent, lack of consent. But yeah, the hierarchy of needs, and there's that common human need for appreciation, validation, to be loved. You may even just oversee something in the patients while they're in your chair. You're finished up, you're typing up your chart notes, and they've got their phone out. And you just may happen to overlook and see something in their, as they open up their Instagram. It's possible.
definitely is possible.
Also, if I may add one more thing regarding the effect of the pandemic on us financially. Lots of people lost their income. Lots of people lost their jobs during this past months. And sometimes they resort to getting loans from, unofficial loans, from shark loans. And that puts them in the position of being trafficked, because now they have to pay that person and all of their income has to go to that person, and they can never repay that debt. And that is a form of human trafficking as well. Being financially, ruined by someone who's taking all of your earnings, because you can never repay that debt that keeps increasing and increasing. And this is a problem that increased a lot during the pandemic because of the situation that people found themselves in, losing their jobs, losing their incomes, losing even the amount of money that they were used to, especially if they have a business. You don't have to be poor to be trafficked. Sometimes you can have, a successful dental clinic or a successful business, and then the lockdown happened. You have to pay salaries for all your employees, and then you have the mortgage, you have other things, and then you find yourself getting bankrupt, and then you take that loan. So you have all these assets, but then you are trafficked because you cannot get away from that situation. So it doesn't have to be someone poor, it doesn't have to be someone that looks a specific way. It can be anyone, as Amber said. I agree with her. Whether it was labor trafficking, whether it was financial, whether it was, I think we need to have an open mind when trying to identify victims.
So I'm also curious with COVID, maybe my visualization, or I guess thought on how things are, humans are mobilized, has been maybe a little sensationalized by, I don't know, TV, Netflix. But in my mind, I was always thinking like thrown in the back of a van, moved somewhere, put on a plane, sedated maybe in a way, or scared to death that they don't, say anything. But we're not really flying. We're not really, well, for a while, when we were in true lockdown. I mean, is it just more at this moment in time, or at least during COVID, that there was grooming and then the mobilization will come later?
Or no mobilization at all. Just you're being trafficked right from their home address. They're leaving in the middle of the day, and they're coming home at night and sleeping in their own bed. That's what's going on in San Diego. Or they may be they're being put up in a hotel during the day, and they're going back to their own home at night, or maybe spending one night or something at the hotel, and then they're going back home. They're not being moved across state lines. They're not going in and out of Mexico back into the United States, which is a common belief that trafficking meant being moved a significant distance away from your home base. And it's just not the case. It's a car trip.
Yeah. Not even that, sometimes within your home. I mean, you can be working and all of your earnings are going, so that no movement is needed sometimes. And even the statistics, they say 80% of people who are trafficked are within their own city.
Yes.
Globally. So they don't, the terminology is a bit confusing because it suggests that there is movement.
I think the word trafficking we associate with movement. And it's really it's a replacement for the word, I think, of slavery, because trafficking is a more encompassing word. We think of slavery more as labor, where trafficking is a word that's more inclusive.
Like drug trafficking and selling and
of a commodity, of bartering,
yes.
And moving of commodity, whether that commodity is a person or a drug.
Or a kidney.
Or an organ.
That's kind of blowing my mind. I'm over here complaining about a video I made, not getting paid for it. I can't imagine giving up a kidney. And then I need to have conversations with you guys on a regular basis just for perspective.
You'll never sleep again.
Yeah, that's why I want it to be sporadic enough that it brings me back down to earth, but that I sleep well. That I make some changes for the greater good, but I'm not scared. I might have to get more dogs or something. I don't even know.
And it's the take home for me, the takeaway point for me is really recognizing what's the demographic of a victim, and let's find that demographic before they become a victim. And let's fix the problems if we can as to why they would be vulnerable to start with. What are we not giving these kids as a society, as a community, as a family, that they're seeking it out from a stranger that comes off as a friend to them? They're not approached as stranger danger. They're not, the scary man in the white van with no windows that's pulling up beside him and snatching them off the sidewalk. That's not going on. It's very subtle. It's very sophisticated. It's very well organized. So we put your head in the sand and say that's not going to happen to you or your kid. I've seen it happen to 40-year-old women. I've seen social media destroy their life because it revealed such seething insecurities and seething vulnerabilities that they are devastated if their photo that they worked so hard to perfect doesn't get their threshold of likes. 5 days or 7 days. These aren't professional models. These aren't people that the fashion industry or makeup or whatever is, their primary profession. This is just an individual that feels that they are an influencer. Individuals that feel that they are an influencer. To me, those women are just as vulnerable. They're being manipulated by the right person that identifies them. That they maybe are used less for sex, but then they're manipulated for money. Tell me I'm beautiful, tell me I'm you're my boyfriend living overseas, and could you wire me $1,500 Western Union? All the time.
And I think it's interesting that there's a lot of documentaries on that, so you can literally just go watch and see it happening. There's one right now about with the Italian doctor and the news investigative reporter. I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, I did watch that one. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but yeah. And he was a real person. He was a real guy with a real medical degree, and he happened to have 2 other wives and a few children. But he was giving her what she needed. And she was a smart, educated woman of her own means. So, it matters what you put out there into the abyss of the media.
But this is not trafficking though, because there's no
it's not trafficking.
There's no force involved.
We went off course there a little bit, but yeah. But I think that my point is that the underlying vulnerability of these individuals that do become victims of trafficking is that is that underlying vacancy or lack of confidence, lack of validation by the people that should be the number one person to put it there.
Well, and I think in the Social Dilemma documentary, I think his name is Tristan Harris, maybe, don't quote me on that name, but he described like our social media and these digital platforms as kind of this utopia dystopia. Like it's a constant battle, because right now we can have this amazing conversation and not be in the same room.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this can now be used, the same Zoom platform can be used to groom somebody. And it's hard to be a layperson, to be somebody that's just like raising some kids, clocking in and out, making dinner at night and going, okay, how can I stay on top of the new TikTok way that my daughter is going to be sexualized?
Yeah.
Like that's just so...
This evolution of technology. And, when I was growing up, I was, taught stranger danger and, don't accept candy from strangers and, which were at
ice cream trucks beware.
Right. I was like this Gary ex-felon selling ice cream out of this broken down van. This is the guy you want me to stay away from. But the methods, the criminals are smarter. The technology is much more sophisticated, and it's much easier to victimize others now, I think, than it used to be, and get away with it. So parents, my parents, who are now the great grandparents to my great niece that was just born, they're not going to be able to teach her how to be safe online. My sister, who is her grandmother, is going to be a better teacher of that. But ultimately, it's going to be her mother, who's now in her mid-20s, to be the one to stay on top of it. It has to be a parent's primary responsibility, but it's not just on the parent. It's siblings, it's other members of the community, the household. Teachers are really, really great resources. Teachers, primary school teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, they may be better than parents with knowing what the kids are doing.
And I think it should be part of the curriculum. It should be part of the curriculum as well, like sex education. This needs to be taught as well.
Great idea.
As individuals, we need to lobby for that to happen, to include this social media grooming within the sexual...
Like social media safety?
Well, I would even just put that in the curriculum with therapy. Just like, let's talk about vulnerability. Let's talk about fears. Let's talk about insecurities and also...
Yeah, it's a healthy psychosocial development.
And going back to the other types of things, if we open our minds a little bit more, then also recruiting people for terrorist cells or terrorism, because they groom them the same way. They groom young men in the same way. They promise them things, and then when they got there, when they cannot leave, and they're faced with this reality, and then they get criminalized if they escape or something. So they're stuck within the systems.
I didn't see the parallel, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Between human trafficking and terrorism.
It is the same way. They prey on their vulnerabilities and their desires, and they understand exactly. They feel unaccepted sometimes in some minorities in Europe, for instance. They feel marginalized. They feel they're not understood by their parents. They feel they need to do more. They see the injustice in the world and they say, well, I need to do something. And these predators prey on that. And then they groom them and then they lure them in. And when they leave Europe and go to ISIS or whatever to join, or Al-Qaeda or whatever, they're faced or they're with this reality that wasn't in their head or wasn't their dream or wasn't the thing that they wanted to do. They see that this is terrorism. They cannot leave anymore because they threaten for their families to be killed. They threaten to be killed themselves. They threaten to whatever reason it is. So it is the same level. recruiting and grooming. I think social media safety is increasingly important for this generation because all of their lives are on the devices. And now, especially during COVID, during the pandemic, they're on their laptop or their iPad the whole day, even when they're I'm a pediatric dentist. Okay, so some of my patients come to me, their siblings are waiting, and they have their laptop open and they're attending a lesson. Okay, so the teacher is speaking, whatever, and they're attending, and they have this cameras like what we have now. But on the side, they're opening Facebook or opening Snapchat or whatever, and they're like playing with it. So the whole day, they're doing both things, and you cannot escape it now. Even if the parents were more controlling of their children regarding the use of devices, and they had the time limit, for instance, before. Now, during this pandemic, you cannot have that control because they're on it all the time for school purposes.
I would ask parents to ask their children's teachers, what's the latest and greatest platform? Well, what are the students using? Just to teach them, teach themselves, keep themselves up to date of what is being used. Like, I don't use TikTok, but like what Sakher said just in the beginning of the podcast, that TikTok has already overshot Instagram, of which we have a profound amount of data.
But it's aimed at children, TikTok. Yeah. This is the difference between Instagram and TikTok. And it's videos, and it's very short videos. So it attracts the younger generation more.
Yeah, I'm on it. And I am, because of the AI, it's definitely learned what I want to see. So I don't see the really, I guess, nefarious, very...
Because you're not looking for it.
Yeah, I'm not looking for it. Yeah, it just doesn't pop into my feed. And if there is something there, I scroll fast and it knows, it learns, all that stuff. And, for a little bit, I was actually seeing, and this is where the dystopia, utopia kind of comes into play too, is because I was seeing some really interesting ways of keeping people safe. For instance, there was a dad that created this FaceTime 60-second loop. So when you got in an Uber, you hit play on this and it sounded like you're FaceTiming your dad and having a conversation of like, yeah, I'll share my coordinates with you. I'll be there in about, 10 minutes. Okay, honey. Can't wait to see you. Go ahead and share your location with me. And I was like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. Like females can do that. But I was like, but of course the people are going to see it too. And of course, it's so there's the good and the bad to it. And, it's just about controlling what you're going to see. I'm also curious too, Sakher, like if, you talked about immigration with us on the last one, and I am curious if there's been any changes, updates, new stuff happening in that world with the pandemic. I mean, obviously here in the US, we have a hot mess. We've stolen children from their parents and we can't find them. And that's just horrific. And outside of that, is there anything different?
Well, the situation is getting worse, actually, for people wanting to escape and they cannot escape. And the smugglers taking advantage of them. So they take their money and then they disappear, whether they take a kidney with their money or not. Sometimes they, you just have to give them $1,000 or $2,000 and then they just steal it and then they leave, still stuck in that country. So the situation is getting worse and worse. Unemployment is getting higher as well. So even because if you imagine Africa, so the north of Africa is where all the other people come from, sub-Saharan Africa to go to Europe. So they end up in North Africa. North African countries are not wealthy. So they have their own problems to begin with, their own citizens. And then you have this influx of immigrants that come, who wants to leave to go to Europe. They don't want to stay there, but they're forced to stay there because there's no means of going overseas because of the situation. Some still do. It hasn't stopped. But the number of people stuck in countries that were the gateway before is now increasing. The number is increasing a lot. Because there's this influx of people that they cannot leave. They stay there and they are the target for human trafficking, whether it was labor, sex, organs. So imagine like a spider web and all these flies are coming towards you. This is exactly the situation in the Middle East, at least. So lots of vulnerable people are coming. They cannot go to the police because they're illegal to be there to begin with. So they are the most vulnerable people. and they're poor and they want to do anything to escape this. So they're willing to do shady things to, give someone some money so they're taken advantage of. And we're seeing it. There was a documentary a while ago regarding Egypt and the organ trafficking thing. And they had interviews with lots of people who had their organs stolen from them, and some traffickers. They met with some traffickers in disguise. It was an amazing documentary. BBC did. But also in Egypt, there's an increased number of bodies that they found thrown in the desert with missing organs, and children as well. So there are these people who are escaped from sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, and they reach Egypt, and then this organized crime. They kill them and they harvest. It's like a supermarket. There's no liver, there's no kidneys, there's no heart, there's no, lungs. And more, we're seeing this. I can say it's increased by folds, but it's a definite that we're seeing more of. Before it was that see this body that has been harvested once every 3-4 months. Now you can see 3-4 bodies a week.
Well, who's buying organs? Like what?
Westerners.
Is it because people are on the list and are not getting them?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Black market.
Yeah.
Western
Black
buyers.
market, yeah. Usually it's Westerners, yeah, Westerner buyers. Because it's cheap, available.
You don't have to go through that pesky waiting list.
Yeah, and there's another problem where the health system is also involved in this because you need the hospital to do an operation. So, right.
That was going to be my next question. I was like, I'm not connecting. How does organ get removed from body, get to surgeon, and everybody's like, we'll just dust that thing off and it's all organ. We don't ask questions.
It's more organized than you can imagine. They do these contracts, tight contracts saying that I'm a relative and I'm donating my kidney with no price for this. And they have this piece of paper, or they bribe hospitals, especially private hospitals and the doctors. And if you think of a country that is, not specifically Egypt, but any country that is poor and the income is very, very low, when you bribe them, then people will do many things. I mean, in their minds, they might think that it is something good. I'm helping someone else. They don't ask where this kidney came from. They just get the money and then they help someone sick. So it is a problem. It is more organized than one imagines.
I'm going to spend the rest of the afternoon processing this whole thing.
I mean, all these factories that, the cheap things that we buy, the sneakers and the clothes and whatever we're buying, we're consuming. We're all consuming cheap stuff that you find in Target or in Costco or whatever. Where did it come from? Most probably it came from a factory that all the workers are trafficked in there, especially children. Yeah.
Interpol has a good amount of data on the organ market.
How does one find that?
A good bit of that is it's open public access. You can just go to Interpol. I don't know that what you can search from their open website is of what they've published, like reports that they would have published too.
There is a good source. There's a good source called the website is the United Nations Office or United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And they have a lot of statistics on all types of the country by country even.
Mm-hmm. And, who are the big players and who are the some opinions, anything that was adjudicated, like big cases that Interpol has. Interpol is international police. And so they assist with resources and manpower, multiple nations with, I would say, more organized crime than individual crimes. Probably not individual crime at all. We only kind of see the organized stuff, I think, Sakher and I, that comes out of our participation with that organization. But yeah, it's extremely eye-opening. And the problem I think that Americans still have is that we still really naively believe that this is always going on somewhere else. It's not going on in America. It is going on in America. It's going on in your hometown. So
as a way to just kind of close a conversation for the dental professional that's hearing this, what could be our call to action? What could we be doing to help the prevention, to help identify anybody that is a criminal that is doing this to somebody or is a victim? Like, what could we do as professionals and individuals just in a community? Like, what would our call to action be?
I think, Sakher, with you being in pediatrics, you being your primary patient base being the highest target of exploitation, you want to take that first, and then I'll pitch it to you.
I would say, I want to mention something. I have a stream in my dental play whatever they want, cartoons, whatever, for my patients. And more, especially the last year, the children are not watching cartoons anymore. They all ask for the YouTuber things, they people who do like home reality things.
Like the little kids that are opening up toys and getting paid millions of dollars?
Exactly, yeah. And not just the kids, but now they have the whole family are doing things, and it's like a home reality thing.
Like the Kardashians and all of that. They want
But targeted at children.
Okay.
And so they're like learning how to play with the toys and they're unboxing certain toys and stuff like that, right?
That was in the beginning. Now they're like the Kardashians, but for kids.
What's the word? Something reality. I can't. The word is.
And it's like the children from 3 years old to, would say, 6 years old. Those don't watch cartoons anymore. They only watch these, and they aspire to be one of these. So they're more incentivized to make their own videos, and then when they do that, then they are a target. So I would say my advice is for individuals is just open the conversation, spread the word, and seek information. If we rely on social media feeds to give us the news or the information, then we will live in a bubble, because this is all targeted specifically to you. So you wouldn't see the outside world. So I would say conversations with people, spread the word, and seek information from trusted sources, the news, or statistics or whatever. So be active in learning more and then teach it. And I think if anyone that hears us now has any influence on any platform, I think the topic on decriminalizing people who were home trafficked is crucial. We cannot move forward without this issue being at least discussed.
I also agree that I like the idea of including the social media dangers in our standardized curriculum, just like Michelle was saying, with elements of therapy and self-reflection and things like that. The younger, like sex ed, it's integrated in baby steps earlier and earlier in our curriculum, with the idea is that you're graduating an ethical and morally robust young person into the workforce that's confident and interpersonally validated. We've got some work to do there, I'm afraid. For hygienists, and I say this all the time, that we in practice, we have the most time with the patients than any other provider in the office. We see them for the longest window of time in their appointments. We see them more frequently in the office than any other provider on a semi-annual and annual basis. I have patients that I see 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times a year, and I'm spending an hour or maybe even a little more with them as an adult. But having a conversation with my adult patients, even just casually, when they inevitably bring up the conversation about their children, it's a general practice. They generally see their kids as well. And asking, maybe just asking, what are your kids into a little bit, what are they paying attention to? It could be information for you as a parent or as an individual that you're having a conversation with another peer about what their kids are into. But it's opening the conversation to, did you happen to see this local documentary? Did you hear about this? And it's just, what I don't want is the naivety of us continuing to believe that's only going to happen to someone else. The statistics are so jaw-dropping, is that it's happening right here. It's happening in my neighborhood. It's happening within my school district, and it could be happening to a member of my family. So the first piece of this is stop believing it's not going to happen to even you or to your loved one to another family member. So getting that out of your head and then opening yourself to some of the really sobering, dark statistics of what's really going on. Knowledge is power. Awareness is power. If you use one of these social media crawler apps to take a look at what your kids are looking at, take a look at who your kids are talking to. There's privacy issues, and every household has their own boundaries. But ultimately, it could shock you. You may be able to protect your child from becoming a victim, ideally. And police are strong advocates for this. Social workers are strong advocates for this. Talk to the school nurse, see what they're seeing. But awareness, education, get your head out of the sand to think it's not going to happen or that it isn't happening. It is.
And I think what you're doing, Michelle and Andrew, is amazing because you're opening this topic for an audience that might not necessarily go there and seek that information. So you're bringing this topic and this conversation to them. You have a wide audience. And I really, really, truly thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this topic in your podcast, which is, not doesn't intersect with maybe your topics, but I think
kind of non-clinical.
Yeah, it is a huge platform that you're utilizing to raise awareness and to open the conversation with other people. So I really thank you.
Well, but y'all are both amazing humans. So thank you so much for even spending almost 2 hours with us to share this time. I can't even believe Andrew let me go this long.
Sorry.
Only for these two, though. No, it's only for you two. For anyone else, right?
Sorry.
You guys are doing amazing work, and we're just we appreciate, as much as you appreciate us having this conversation, we love that you came on to share this with our audience. And if anyone wants to reach out and ask further questions or follow-ups, how can they do that with you guys?
Email for me is best initially. And my email is ariley, ARILEY, at decoeducation.com. That's DECO education.com. And I am more than happy to hear from anyone if you have questions or if you just want a little bit more granular details or things like that. I'm more than happy to help in any way that I can. And again, Michelle, I will send you information that you can put in the show notes. And I would hope, Sakher, you would send her the location of where your atlas is. The atlas, for people not familiar with kind of that language that we use in forensics, the atlas, it's fascinating. But any pediatric dentist, any practicing dentist or hygienist, I think, would find your atlas to be super, super useful. Parents would find it very useful in some stages as well. It's more granular than probably what the average parent needs, for apical root closure. Maybe you don't want to take it that far. But if it's a threshold between a child receiving public assistance or not, then it's very, very important. We use it in San Diego County. I have it up at the medical examiner's office right in my dental autopsy suite. I have it right there. So every time I go in and do a case, I can think of Sakher. We are with I know our anthropologist works in the same area as well, and she loves it as well. So, you're getting good props in San Diego.
Well, for me, it's Twitter. Twitter would be the easiest. It's at Sakher Alqahtani, my name. I wouldn't say the spelling. People can read it at the end notes of your podcast.
Yeah. Yes, no, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much again. Your episodes are always super popular. This information is critical for us to know just as human beings and in addition to being medical providers. And I'm just so thrilled that you came on. It's so late for you, Sakher. So thank you so much. I'm glad that we were made it work with Amber's time zone too. So this was fantastic. And thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm sure everyone is either, depressed, feeling empowered. I don't know. There's probably a range of emotions after listening to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the overall takeaway that I have from it is there's plenty of work to be done. And we as dental professionals have a lot that we can help with, whether that's literally the patient in her chair and that aspect of it, or whether we want to go above and beyond like Amber does and locally working, like she's like with the hotels and doing all those different things that she talked about, like doing that part of it. There's so much that you can do if this is speaking to you. And I think that is amazing.
And definitely reach out to them. They gave their contact information. So if you have questions or you want to know how you can get more involved or get more information, they would be such great guides. And while you're at it, if you have any questions or comments, concerns, thoughts, suggestions, whatever it is, shoot us an email. Or you can even go to our website at taleoftwohygienists.com. You could subscribe to our newsletter there. Follow us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And then our emails are Michelle, or you can do Andrew at ataleoftwohygienists.com. Oh, we would love for you to subscribe to our newsletter and also thank PDT for offering the CE portion of this podcast. So you do get some CE for it. And it's all because PDT supports the podcast. They have from the very beginning. They make amazing instruments and they support our furthered education. And we love them so much. So I think that's it. Anything else from you?
I'm good. I hope everyone has a great week though.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.